Alright, so what I want to show in this video here is you see those defects in the casting on either side of the guide. They don't look good, right? First impression would say, let me just keep going with the sander and remove those. But this is a stock comparing cylinder head, and that's why this presents its own set of complications, and not complications, but obstacles. Now, being a stock comparing cylinder head, this port stock is 31 millimeters at its biggest point, and it tapers down to about a 24 millimeter-ish cross-sectional area. Now, what you need to do in this situation is actually make this port smaller. Now, by me taking and sanding, just for looks basically, trying to get those removed with a grinding wheel or with with a cartridge roll, yes, I could get them out. But what's the better thing to do right here? The best thing for me to do right here would be to take epoxy and enter it into there and then lightly sand the surface. Because by me trying to remove those gouges, those factory flaws, I will have to remove too much of the aluminum. So here's a look at the port. It's basically rolled edges. I'll show you the top. And as you can see here, all I've done is break the edges. All I've done is break those edges nicely. I've taken the guide punch, moved the guide down and out of the way, and if you can see the outer circle of edge of aluminum, I haven't cut into anywhere near where the guide is going to be. I've stayed all on the outside of that. And it's very tricky to do this. You need very, very small cartridge rolls. And you need to have a very, very long mandrel, a very fine hand, and a variable speed grinder to do this. Now all you're doing is rounding over those edges. Now this is the first step. This is step one to my port job. So I've moved the guide down and rounded those edges gently. I've only spent about 45 minutes to this point in total on the porting job. Next step I'm going to do is start down from this end on the bowl and work back down towards the port. And I'll get back to you once I've done that. Alright guys, so what I have now is the cylinder head positioned differently so I can approach it from the bowl. Now, what I'm trying to get out now is just right here in this area and right here in that area. And I'm just trying to smooth those ever so littly. So what would you go to in this situation? Would you go to a carbide burr? Would you go to a cartridge roll like this? Would you choose a smaller cartridge roll like that? Would you choose a thick cartridge roll to really bulk out the material to, get a nice quick, even rough cut? That's what those are good for, even rough cuts. What I'm going to choose to go for is a 3/4 inch cross buff. Now you always want to start as softly as you can. You never want to charge into something. So why start with a sand roll when you could start the next step lighter with the cross buff? So I'm going to try putting this on a mandrel and coming in here and seeing what this will do to my edge. I'll do that and I'll get back. Okay, so I've taken my cross buff and gone over this corner now. And I know the light's playing tricks, but you can see how soft that roll is. And this is the cross buff I used on a variable speed grinder. And you can see how now on the sides, it just rolls right in. Very, very smooth. Let me try to reposition the light. Very smooth. Very nice roll. You see how it just rolls right in. And that's what you want. You want it to just roll right in. So the next thing I'm going to focus on, if I can get my light to stay, I'll show you. So the next point of focus is going to be here. and I'm going to focus. Let me get something to point with. The next point I'm going to focus on is going to be right down in there. Now what I'm going to use to try to ease this, I've already taken my sand roll on this mandrel and come in from the other side, and I've rolled this over with a very small cartridge roll. This very, very small one. Very small compared to my finger. And I've got right down into this groove here. And I've eased that over almost all the way flat. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take an old used mandrel and I'm going to try coming in and rolling that over. So I'll do that and I'll get back to you. Alright, so now let's take another look at this port. Now all I've done is round the edges and then basically refine that with a cross buff. That right there is about as far as you need to take a stock pairing cylinder head. That's going to be as far as I take this. For now, what needs to happen now is, look at all this dust and dirt. What needs to happen now is all in the back here, in this low area here where my finger is going to be filled with epoxy. I haven't done any work on the bowl because I need to do the epoxy first. All I've worked is this single transition, basically from up here, down, over here, and then back up. That's the only part of the port I've worked. And a little bit down along the, what they would consider a shark fin, even though in this situation it's more rounded. So that's the only transition I've worked so far. I haven't really taken any size out of the port, just rounded the edges. Now what I'm going to do next is epoxy this and epoxy the short turn radius, and then I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to be doing the shaping on the epoxy. So just another look before I get done tonight and put the epoxy. Just went over it one more time with the cross buff. This is basically the shape you'd be looking for if you did stock pairing. All you would want to do is do the epoxy work, but everything's all cleaned up, guide's all nice and streamlined. I'll show you a look from the top. And see if I can turn this light back on so you can get a better view. Actually, that's giving you a pretty good view there. Maybe the light's too much. But yeah, let's see if I can get camera. What's happening is this stand I have is getting in the way. So there's a look down the port. And everything is just smoothed over. So that's looking down from the valve down. Basically everything's just smoothed out of the way, so that's with the light, and I'll move the light away slowly so you can have all the different variations of it. But it's actually at a pretty fine polish down in there. I'm gonna have to rough that back up, but everything is just nice and clean for the epoxy. So that's it for this shot, and we'll see you next. Alright guys, so now I'm actually in my house at this point. I've brought the cylinder head inside and I've done the epoxying. I don't know if you can really see it down there in the back of the port corner. And done the bottom of it. Let me see if I can get a better shot. Right now it's kind of rough. As you can see, I did put the insulator on here, and the insulator sits offset on the bottom and on this hand side. It's actually going to need a couple layers of epoxy, but this is just the first layer I put in, and as you can see, I've only put it in on the bottom of the short turn radius. And why I'm doing that is because I'm trying to build up that short turn. If you see the way like the stock short turn is, like even the exhaust port, well actually I have another cylinder head here. If you see the way that is, right after the seat, there is a sharp corner. And seeing as though this is a stock appearing class, what I'm going to do is build up the short turn radius. If this was an open modified, I'd be going about this a different route. I did take, excuse me, and put a little epoxy down beside like the guide boss or the shark fin, and I did that just because there was those little imperfections there, and those will get sanded out. And then I put some down in the back of the bowl. It's important when you're doing that to make sure you prop the head up in a way. If you could see, I've left, you know, a couple thousandths of an inch away from that guide, and that's just to help me round over that back corner instead of it being like that, like a sharp edge. It's just going to help round it over. Usually it takes me about 3 times with the epoxy to get it in there enough to the point where I'm satisfied with the way the port looks. So it's just a process of doing the rough porting first, getting that pretty much finalized on the long turn, and then on the short turn side, adding the epoxy. Comes out pretty much rough the first time. When you sand and shape it, then you can kind of use like a longer straight edge with the epoxy and almost like squeegee it on there. But that first time, you know, really building up the thickness of it, it's kind of hard. But as you can see, we're just working towards extending that short turn, so when the air is coming in, you know, it has a chance to slow down as it comes up towards the valve instead of coming to a sharp angle and basically have to do an about face because the valve's there. So that air is coming this way, and picture the valve being slightly open. It's coming this way, it needs to do like an about face almost and come out. So extending that short turn allows the air to basically come from this position where it's coming in to be coming almost up. So it'll be like turned a lot easier, so that air can get in and around the short turn better. Did a lot of work on flow benches, and that was definitely an area of improvement. You really have to refine the shape in there to get it to flow correctly, and but yeah, this is it's on its way. Stock appearing cylinder head. I don't know if you guys wondering what these are, but these are just I think they're called like small hole gauges, but they're a gauge where you put them into your guide, and you can turn this, and that'll allow you to get into your guide and measure the inside of your guide. Then you'll take your micrometer, measure that, and that's how you set your valve guide clearance between your valve and the guide. Right now the guide's been sank down a little bit just to get it out of my way so it doesn't get damaged, but yeah. Alright, so I think I'm going to end this video and post it. It's been pretty long, and then the next one we'll see if we can finish it up on the porting, at least on the intake side. But I'll post this now so you guys get to watch. Alright, bye. Oh, and just if you're wondering, to this point in this head, I probably have 12 to 15 hours. And the price of materials, the welding gas and the rod and the epoxy and all the tools and equipment. But that's about what it takes to do one of these welded chambers. The welded chambers take a long time, but right now I'm kind of giving them out as a deal, especially if you're to a race team or something like that. So give me a call. All right, thanks. Bye.